Hi there, this is Rob Zacny for IGN, reporting on my first couple of weeks with Elite Dangerous. It's a big game, as I'm sure you've heard, so we've decided to push back a full review until we've logged a little more time behind the stick. But in the meantime, here are some impressions of the game so far. If I had to sum up my feelings about Elite Dangerous in one word, it'd be ambivalence. Even after a couple weeks with Elite Dangerous, I'm still balanced on a knife edge between profound boredom and utter rapture. More than a few times I have reached a space station and immediately exited a desktop, and then pushed away from my desk to go do something, literally anything else. But then I find myself back at my computer 5 minutes later, mug of coffee in hand, and launching right back into the game. And that's because there really is nothing else like Elite. I don't think I can remember another game to let me feel like I really was out there exploring the stars the way I feel like I'm doing in Elite. After dozens of jumps, my heart still lurches into my throat when my ship emerges from hyperspace and brings me face to face with a burning star, mottled by solar flares and wreathed in solar filaments. It's a mix of fear and awe that, even after growing used to the workaday business of flying spaceships in Elite, still brings me up short every time. But then I get on with my delivery route. I'm on the final frontier, but Elite always reminds me of another classic line from a game about an awe-inspiring world. Peach Wilkins in Bioshock. He says that they come to Rapture thinking they're going to be captains of industry, but they all forget that somebody's got to scrub the toilets. Well, everywhere I go in space in Elite Dangerous, I find someone else is ready to hand me a brush. A lot of what you're going to do in Elite, especially at the start, is kind of menial labor. It just happens to be taking place in one of the most amazing, awe-inspiring settings you can imagine. You go to a space station and pick up missions from the bulletin board, for instance. In most cases, they're not going to be terribly lucrative, so you start trying to build a little sideline and trade goods. If I'm going to this one place, I might as well take a little something that they need, and maybe increase my profit margin. So then you start poring over navigation charts and trade tables, trying to identify what those effective trade routes are, and then you fly them again and again and again. The margins are small, especially at the start, and so it takes either a long time or a little bit of luck to start earning the credits you need for better ships and equipment. Flying itself is routine, bordering on ritual. Elite Dangerous is very much in the Microsoft Flight Simulator or Euro Truck Simulator vein. A lot of what I spend my time doing in Elite is about as tense and challenging as flying a 737 from O'Hare to SeaTac. I observe proper landing procedures, requesting docking permission from the nearby space station at exactly 7.5 kilometers away from the landing pad. I fly directly and safely to the right spot, lower the landing gear, and touch down. Then I take a new mission, cargo, and fly right back out. But there is a reason why these simulation games get their hooks into so many people, and it's happening to me in Elite. I find the routine becoming meditative. I enjoy getting a little bit better at doing something that's kind of boring but also kind of demanding. I really enjoy landing, bringing my ship down for a smoother and smoother, more assured touchdown each time. At this point, my skids barely touch down before I'm already lifting off for the next space station, flicking the switch on my landing gear while using the vertical thrusters to boost clear of the pad, and then I throw the throttle forward and plunge right back into deep space. And there's little things, too, that never really get old for me. I love, always, the little countdown before a hyperspace jump as I throw the throttle all the way to the stops and hear the flight computer counting down, and then I'm hurled into hyperspace. I'm a little less enamored of the frameshift drive itself. The frameshift drive is how you travel around inside star systems. It gets you going hundreds of times the speed of light so that you can shoot from one end of a star system to another in just a few minutes. In free flight, the frameshift drive is what lets you soar like a bird around planets and asteroid belts like some kind of stellar tourist. But when you have an actual destination in mind, the frameshift drive attempts to regulate your speed so you don't wildly overshoot the mark. But if you leave it to its own devices, the drive will fly a crushingly slow flight plan and make the minutes drag by as it slowly inches its way towards your goal, like it's really trying to illustrate you and force you to live Zeno's paradox. Now, you can hurry things along a little bit if you manage the throttle by yourself, and you can fly a slightly more aggressive and faster route, but that also risks you overshooting your target and having to backtrack. The frameshift drive doesn't have doesn't have predictable inputs, because on the one hand it's trying to manage your approach to a set destination, but on the other hand it's also trying to react to your input on the throttle. So there's a little bit of push and pull between what you're trying to tell the system to do and what the flight computer's trying to do as well. So the controls don't always feel consistent, and there are times that I didn't fully understand why I went rocketing right past my destination, even though I've been trying to slow down to their correct speed for some time. There are times the frameshift drive seems to take on a life of its own. Overall, it's such a fussy thing. You spend so much time managing it that I found myself really praying for some kind of decent autopilot system to handle this aspect of flying, because it's one of the major aspects of flying spacecraft in Elite Dangerous, and it's probably the least engaging. The fact that it is this fussy and this wonky makes it feel a little bit, honestly, like you're flying the desert bus of the stars, and that's not a place I really want to end up when I'm playing Elite Dangerous. But it's not all cargo runs and point A to point B. It's a dangerous world out there, and there are a lot of people, AI pirates and human buccaneers alike, who lurk on the trade lanes, pouncing on travelers with frameshift interdiction devices. And if you buy one for your ship, you too can become an interstellar pirate. But when you're interdicted, things start happening very fast. Your HUD warns you that you're under attack about a second before your smooth trip across the stars hits turbulence, and you start corkscrewing wildly. You're like a fish caught on someone's line. You have a few seconds to get your ship pointed to an escape vector that's highlighted on your HUD, and if you can stay pointed roughly in that direction, you can break interdiction and get safely on your way. So during an interdiction, there's always this short, sharp battle as you try to hit the escape vector while someone else tries to reel you in. It's usually pretty exciting stuff. Assuming you don't make it out, there's a really good chance you're going to find yourself in combat. Maybe you can leg it and throw out all your powered engines and jettison your cargo and hope you'll be left alone, but the chances are you're still going to have to do some shooting. And that's where we discovered that Elite Dangerous is probably not going to be a classic space dogfighting game. Combat isn't terrible, but it too often devolves into a series of head-on firing passes that test who has better shields and bigger guns. The ships have too much momentum to really yank and bank the way they do in games like TIE Fighter and Free Space 2, thanks to Elite's somewhat realistic physics. If you've played the old Wing Commander games, you kind of know exactly where I'm coming from here. It'll just turn into a series of, playing chicken with each other as you just blast away. That's what happens when you have two ships of relatively close performance. And in those cases where you can stay on someone's tail, or vice versa, that usually means that someone just has a better ship for dogfighting, and it probably wasn't a fair fight in the first place. None of which really makes me want to pursue combat as a major career in Elite, either in the form of bounty hunting or piracy. While bounties can be really lucrative, and even game-changing, like this one time I was flying between two space stations, and I sort of stumbled into an active gunfight between police and pirates. And I ended up intervening because once I figured out what was going on, I saw the odds were on the police's side, and I decided, what the heck, I'll try to nab a kill here. I didn't know it, but it turns out there were some really high bounties on those pirates, and so I ended up scoring a killing shot on a pirate that turned out to be worth something like 70,000 credits, which was about 10 times what I was making from cargo runs at the time. So if you get lucky like that, taking a bounty can be fantastic. The problem is, most cases when you're trying to take a bounty with your starting ship, you'll find yourself a little bit overmatched. But even if you're not, and you are in sort of a fair fight, the combat can still be a little mind-numbing, because you're just kind of flying at each other and blasting away, and a lot of the starting weapons are so ineffective that it's almost like you're trying to erode the enemy rather than shoot him down. Every time my enemy's shields came back up, I just got this wave of depression as I realized I'm going to have to do the exact same thing again, and the fight had just been prolonged by about 10 more minutes. So, where I'm at right now is that Elite is an obviously impressive game, and visually it's just absolutely stunning. But I don't think I'm going to I don't think I can remain perched between boredom and wonder forever. There are times when Elite feels just too much like a classic grind, where I'm performing repetitive tasks so that I can make ultimately illusory progress towards ships and equipment that will just allow me to do even more of the exact same repetitive tasks on a bigger scale. I wish I saw more of the politics that the game hints at. There are separatists and anarchists and dictators jockeying for position among the stars. And if you study your map and information about star systems and the governments there, you'll find that some places are economically booming, some are in recessions, some are expansive, some are defensive. But all of that is just notes on a map. When I'm flying out there in space, I don't really get the sense that anything is really happening out there in the universe. I've seen some videos on YouTube of people wandering into wars in Elite Dangerous between capital ships and their enemies. But I have never really seen that. I've never really felt like I'm in danger of flying through a war zone at any minute. But I am still getting acclimated to Elite. I've barely touched on deep space exploration, for instance, which is another sort of one of the career paths you can pursue in this game. And I'm a few more cargo runs from having a stable of ships and weapons that will really let me pursue just about any kind of mission I want on a whim. So I'm hoping that I can open the experience up a bit and get a little more choice about what I want to do. Right now it's a sandbox, but before I can really enjoy it, first I've got to build all the toys that I'm going to be playing around with. And fortunately, that means driving a space delivery truck for another 10 or 20 hours, I suspect. Anyway, we'll be back in the new year with a full review of the game and more discussion of other playstyles and some of the more advanced options you find once you get through what I'm hoping is going to be a grindy start to the game, but one that opens up the experience quite a bit. But until then, and for now, stick with IGN for all your space combat needs.